2023 and this is my YouTube channel. I'm Aldridge and I'm going to do a AuthorTube Meet the Newbie, answer some questions so that you can get to know me a little bit better and what to expect on my channel. So question 1 is, how did you find out about AuthorTube? So I think that I found it in quite an organic way. I didn't go looking for it. You know how the algorithm works, it found me. So I'm always watching things to do with writing or books and things like that. I also watch lots of other content on YouTube, but I think it kind of found me, to be honest. So the next one is question 2. What genres do you write in? So I write UA, which is aimed at teens. I've always written stuff for teens, even when I was a teenager, and I kind of like never grown out of writing it, so UA. As I got older, I started wanting to add a little bit of fantasy in there, so my books are fantasy, and I am a sucker for romance. I'm a romantic at heart, so a lot of my stories also have romance. So I would say the the foundation of almost all my stories is UA, fantasy, romance. Though I have ideas that might also take the stories into a little bit of sci-fi or sometimes a little bit of dystopia. Historical, because I've got one that's set in the 90s. I can't believe that is considered historical now. So the next question is question 3, and it asks, what are your preferred tenses, point of view and category of stories? So there's 3 parts to this question, so I'm going to break it down. So my preferred tense is past tense. So when I sent my novel off to my editor, she picked up that when I was writing action scenes and got very excited writing, I suddenly switched to present tense. So she asked me, is this a writing style that you did intentionally? Do you want it to be like that? But as I was going to be self-published and a new author, I was worried about people being really critical against me, and it wasn't intentional, even though I think that's kind of like cool little quirk. But I did work with my editor to put it all into past tense because I just did not want those reviews saying, oh, she's flitting between tenses in her novel. So I wanted it to be all the same so everyone would be all happy. So once you start the book, you know what to expect all the way through, past tense. The next part of the question says, what is your preferred point of view? I always write in first person point of view. It's what I prefer reading, it's what I prefer writing. It makes you feel really close to the character because you literally are the character. I know a lot of people enjoy writing in third person view, but for me that takes me out of the story just a little bit, that I sometimes struggle to enjoy it as much as I do first person. And then the next one says category of story. I'm not quite sure what the creator of these questions meant by category of story, so I'm wondering if they mean like the age range, which is UA, or if they mean the period it's written in, which is usually contemporary for most of my stories. Yes, it's set in the real world, but yeah, that's it. The only thing I would say is, when I published Ocean Heart, I started the process of publishing Ocean Heart just before the pandemic, so the release was during lockdown. So within my novel, the pandemic and the lockdown never existed. It's like, yeah, it just doesn't exist. So if that appeals to you, you might like my books. So on to the next question, which is question 4. Are you a plotter, plantser or pantser? Okay, so I'll quickly explain what each of those are. So plotter is someone who spends a lot of time researching, planning the whole novel. They might also develop all the characters before they start, know the locations, draw some maps, all that kind of like very thorough stuff. A plotter is the other end, a pantser is the other end of the spectrum. I know some people don't like the term pantser and they prefer the word discovery writer. So I had a little think then, I want to say developmental writer. Discovery writer. So they discover the story as they are writing it. So it's just literally and it's called pants because they're like doing it by the seat of the pants. There's no planning, they just have an idea, they just start. Now plantser is the one in the middle. It's a merger of plotting and pantsing. Sorry for the people who don't like that word. So it's there in the middle. So they might have a little bit of a plan, and a little bit of discovering it as they go. I would say I'm a planner, so I think most writers are. I found that when I spent too long planning a story, it kind of like killed the fun of discovering the story as you're writing it, because that's part of the fun process for me, is like being surprising myself when I'm writing, like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea, whilst I'm writing it. If I do that all at the start, it's like writing 86,000 words when there's no surprises is a little bit dull to write. I also discover my characters. I don't like sitting there thinking about what's their name, what's their favourite colour, why do I need to know all that? I'd rather discover it as I go, and something might be useful for the story and I'll drop it in there. Yeah, so oh, and the planning that I do, because obviously I said that I do a little bit of the planning. What I usually do is, and I've done this even from when I was a teenager, as a teenager I'd grab my pen and I'd just scribble in the back of the book like an outline. So I call it the bare bones outline, so it literally would be like a sentence for different things that I expected to happen in the story, usually in the order I expect them to happen, but sometimes there'll be little arrows squiggled around saying actually this will need to happen first, then this, or I'll come up with an idea and there's no space above, so I have to draw a little arrow and write it down below. So that is how I would plot, would be just bullet points, and that's it. And then I just get writing, and just get writing, and I'm usually like discovering things as I go along. I usually don't have character names, so sometimes it does stall me a little bit, because sometimes I'll have to stop halfway through and think, right, what should my friend be called? And I'll be on the baby name sites looking for a name that I think would suit the friend in the story, and also writing it in that way, discovering things as you go, sometimes means that there'll be something that will appear later in the story, and then I have to, when I'm editing, I might need to hint or add little bits in before to make the later bit make sense. I hope that makes sense, because I'm not going to do a whole video here on that. Okay, so that's that's that. So the next question is question 5. Are you self-published, have a publisher, or to be published? So I am self-published. I spent probably about 10 years chasing the dream of being traditional published. When I first started really seriously querying all the time, there wasn't much going on with self-publishing. There was you could do it through Amazon, or the other one that most people did was they would print a load of books and then have to try and sell them. So they'd have these garages full of books, which didn't sound very desirable and quite expensive. So it wasn't really something I wanted to do. It also seemed a little bit like unclear how to do it, so I didn't feel confident going for it. But then I met some really good indie authors through Instagram. They were really like forthcoming with their information. They would share like how much things cost, the process they took, the steps, shared some of their contacts with me, which really helped. Some indie authors were more helpful than others, and when I felt like I could see how to do it, it felt more possible. There were some other steps that came into it, things that made me decide to let's go self-published in the end. But yeah, that's how I ended up being self-published. So the next question says, is number 6, and it says, if you are not published yet, who is your dream publisher or literary agent? So obviously I am my publisher, because I do everything for myself and hire people to help with tasks like editing, formatting, cover design, that kind of thing. But I did have dream people. So one of my dream people was, I really wanted to have Chloe Seeger as my literary agent. It took years for her to be at a point where my manuscript was ready at the same time she was accepting submissions, and it actually happened at YLC, which is Young Adult Literacy Convention, usually happens in July in London. I was at the book festival, and she was there at a pitching event. So I went up, and you had to like sit like in a row, and when it was your turn you got to come up and see the agents who were sitting there, and you didn't get to choose which agent was, whichever one was free. And the first one I got to speak to was a different agent to Chloe. The lady I spoke to was absolutely lovely. She was really excited about my book, and she was like, send me the full manuscript. So I was like, yes I will. And then April Grace, who was at the event and was the one encouraging me, go do this picture frame, because I was a bit nervous, but she was there like in my corner saying, go do it, because we'd met on Instagram and we were both like, realised we were both going to be at the same festival, so we thought we might as well meet up while we're there. And then she's become a really good friend. Anyway, she was like, go, you might actually get to see Chloe, who she knew was my dream agent. So I sat in the queue again, waiting to see if I got a time, because obviously when it gets to the end of the session, that's it. So I wasn't sure if I would like get cut off if I got that. I mean, the luck with me and Chloe, it was like, it was never going to happen. She was closing her submissions just as I'd be ready to submit. So I got there, I got to pitch to Chloe. She really loved it. She started asking me loads and loads of questions. It was going amazing. And she was like, send me the full manuscript. So I was like walking away from this book festival with like 2 full submission requests. I was like trying really hard not to bounce off the walls because I was like, ah! And I just couldn't believe it. I really thought, this is it. This is, because I'd waited so long thinking that if one day, I knew that Chloe had heard about my book, she would love it. I was convinced of it. So like, I was like, oh, once she reads it, she's gonna love it. So I sent it over to her. She had a read of the whole novel, and sad story is she come back and she said no. That's just the way it works sometimes. And I guess that she realised that she didn't have a space on her books for the type of novel I had written, or like she had something similar. I don't know what the reason was that she said no, but it turned into a no. And over the years I'd had lots of situations like that where they'd read 3 chapters, asked for the full, or they even said that they were really excited and they were going to present it at some meeting, and then it still come back as a no in the end, because it was between me and another author, and I don't know who the other author is, but I hope they did well. But yeah, so in the end I decided that I was tired of waiting for somebody else to say yes to me when I could say yes to myself, and that was it. Okay, so the next question is question 7, and it says, what AuthorTube content should we expect on your channel? Okay, so I am planning to do more book reviews. I did one September of last year. It was about Blood Moon. I can't remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but it did pretty well, seeing as I have like very small following at the moment. So I think I will try and do more like that. In fact, in that video I mentioned about the whole Chloe thing in there as well, because I went to one of the author talks. So she had an author there that was talking about a non-fiction book they published, and it kind of related to the book that I was doing a book review. And I do think she's brilliant, and she does know all the stuff about UA. So if you go on Twitter, she tweets quite often, you can follow her on there, and she has a lot of stuff about what's going on in publishing in UA. She's a very interesting person to follow. But yeah, I'm going to stop fangirling over the agent that said no to me. And I am going to focus on what you can expect from me. So I will talk about my writing, so I will talk about my books and my writing process, updates on things like that, so kind of like a little kind of vlog every so often. I'm hoping to do some collabs at some point once I get more confident with YouTube, and that's it. I would like to at some point do like some how-to videos to help other writers or people thinking about self-publishing with some like help on what to do, because that really helped me, having other authors sharing me their tips and advice. So I would love to, is it pay it back, pay it forward, I don't know, that thing. So I'd like to be able to help other people with what worked for me in case that helps work for them. Okay, so question 8 is, when did you start writing? So I actually started writing stories really early. I was inspired by the Orchard Tree reading series, Biff, Chip and Kipper. It had a magic key and they could go on adventures, so I guess it was early contemporary fantasy. And I just love writing those kids more adventures. And if you've seen the series, you know that it was pretty hard to write even more adventures for those kids. There's a lot of books in the series. The first time I wrote stories with my own characters, I was in my late teens. I think I was using writing as like a kind of therapy, but through fiction. So I was like writing stories to get like things that were going on at school out of my head. So there was, you know, the teenage years are quite brutal. There's a lot of things going on. There's like all the first stuff going on with boyfriends. There is like eating disorders, self-harm, all that. So it was quite dark, the stories that I wrote as a teenager. And the worst thing of all was I didn't know how to end a story, so often my characters would die at the end. I have got better at writing endings, and I don't have to kill my character at the end of the story to finish it. So question 9 is, what is the first story you ever wrote? Which I think I answered in the last one, so instead I'm going to tell you about the first story I ever published, which is Ocean Heart, and I published it in December of 2020. It is a UA fantasy. It's about a teen girl called Mariah, and she's a mermaid. You know what? I should go grab a copy of it. Hang on 1 second. So here it is, Ocean Heart. I'm probably going to have to do that reverse camera thing because it's obviously showing back to front on there. I'll show you all the clips now. But I'll read the back so you can hear the blurb. So, being a mermaid brings a new depth to its complicated. High school teen Mariah's life is anything but simple. Between a crush on her best friend and a rivalry brewing with the swim team star, her powers awaken early. When Mariah's guardian meddles in her life with magic, she causes more harm than good. The Soul Reapers are coming, and there's a werewolf hungry for murder. All secrets wash ashore sooner or later, and Mariah's about to discover hers. Mixing a messy love life with deadly powers will whip up a storm of trouble. Can Mariah contain it, or will she be swept up in its wake? A gripping story about a mermaid, self-acceptance, and romance that literally sparks. And while you're here, I might as well show you. So this is the inside cover. It's got a little bit of artwork, and then all the chapter pages look like this. Oh, I loved being involved in the whole process of creating this and making it the way I wanted it to be. So that was really, really good fun. And hopefully I'm going to keep working on Sky Heart this year, which will be book 2 in the series, and I hope I'll be doing some updates through the year about how that's going. I'm currently like this, I'm at my dining table recording this, and here is the manuscript that I'm working on, self-editing. So I thought I've got the feedback from my developmental editor. I'm reading all her feedback back and writing notes as I read through it myself. And I print it out at local printers, and I then will start typing the edits into the manuscript to update it, and hopefully I'll get to the next stage. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. I hope that you will stick around and watch more of my videos in future, and that we'll get to know each other much better.